And thanks to youth, I have learned how to use a dual screen. My oldest, she has taught me well, at least well enough. And so I've been able to, oops, but I think somebody got bumped out. There we go. So welcome to this class. It's called Rise, 12 Key Elements to Align with Your Soul Purpose, or sometimes I say to align with who you're here to be, or to show up as yourself, or, you can fill in the blank, but it's really coming into, your potential and all of that in terms of, what is it that you're here to do on the planet? What is it that you come in with as an inherently spiritual human being? And, I just go through that process in a very brief way, but as open and I would say organic as possible. So I started offering this series at the beginning of 2022, and it's been a really fun way to get to know new people and connect. And each class, what I would say, is basically a standalone. So you don't have to have gone through any series. Each one, it really has a wealth of information in and of itself. And at the same time, if you did miss any, you can definitely go back and watch them. Each topic that we cover, I try to go in depth to some degree and really kind of hold space and include insights about your inherent gifts and purpose as a human being, guidelines for coming back into alignment, as well as tools to implement during your own spiritual journey. If you did miss anything in the past, you could simply go to my website. I will include the website in the chat. It's veronicalee.tv, and you would just go under Learn, find the classes, and you will find the 12 Key Elements class, and you can register for the next one, which is in December, but you can also click on the link that says, did you miss something? Go here, and you can find the recordings as well as the resources. So for each class, I also offer resources so that if you want to explore deeper, I have hundreds of articles and, resources in terms of that I've written over the past, I've been doing this for a long time, but anyway, so lots of articles. So if I touch on a topic, the articles, the interviews I've done, the audios I've made are there to support you, and they're all free. And I just include that, and that will be in the chat as well. So those are in the chat today for today's, and I'll add that in a minute, but all the past ones are also there, and they include the links and such. So I am Veronica Lee. I have a metaphysical upbringing, which is, kind of interesting given that I'm 56 and I was raised with all things weird and woo-woo. When I was a kid, my mom discovered metaphysics. I was about 3 years old. And so I would go with her to all of her little groups, and we learned how to meditate. I would hold my hands over people, and I had to learn how to visualize myself getting well when I was sick. She was not a Christian scientist, but she was really what I would call a new ager. When I read and learn about, that was the term we used back then. And she basically taught me that, we're all intuitive. We are all these spiritual beings. We are all God incarnated. And at one point, I remember she saying to me, you're your own God. I'm my own God. We're all God. And I thought, God, I really screwed things up, because if I've created all of this, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know who put me in charge. And so that was a little bit daunting. And then I learned how to manifest, and then it got cool again, because it was like, oh, and I literally, wrote out in 1983, my perfect guy. And that was my husband. I hadn't met him yet. And 3 years later, he did show up and matched it to a T. And I jokingly have said, but what did I know when I was 17? We were together for 30 years, but unfortunately, he passed away 4 years ago. I'm a natural intuitive. We all are. And I came in just highly awake. Been there, done that, been to lots of different incarnations, and sort of kept a lot of that intact so that I could share it this time around. I'm an inspirational speaker and writer, been writing for Om Times for many years, and speaking, at various events, interviews and such. And I consider myself a transformational visionary, just really holding space for you to really own who you are, to step into your power. And my intention is always to empower others. So, showing you your truth, showing you your gifts, and giving you tools that you can discover yourself more deeply and be empowered by, seeing where your choices are, et cetera. That's really that's the heart of what I do, helping you realign with your truth, your power, and your joy. And I'm a mother of 4 young adults, and my youngest are twins who are 21. My son is 25, and my oldest is 28. And yeah, it's been a journey indeed. So onto this program, Rise. It's not a program, it's just information, really. It's just information. I speak at a lot of psychic fairs. In fact, I'm going to be at the Sacramento Psychic Fair, Psychic and Healing Arts Fair this Sunday from 10 to 6, I think it is. And at 2 o'clock, I'll be giving a talk. And the talk for this coming Sunday is called, what is it called? Reclaim Your Soul Power. This talk, Rise, I spoke this, my husband was still alive, I remember, and he it was supposed to be when Facebook Live was fairly new, and it was supposed to videotape it, and it didn't quite work because it didn't go live. But nonetheless, it was kind of like, what I saw in my clients that really helps get them from this place of not knowing who they are, not knowing their gifts, and moving toward this place of, being themselves, being in their power, being their authentic selves. And so what I thought was to use the acronym RISE, if we think about our ascension, about awakening, about, coming into that place. And so I created 3 R's, 3 I's, 3 S's, 3 E's that really showed, that kind of illuminates the path, let's say. What I jokingly say is it's not, RISE and you get there. It's a little bit of a drawn out process, right? Really coming into this is, rise, right? It takes a little bit of time. And actually we're very, I would say we're not so linear. We're often more like a spiral. So we might have some sort of awakening and then we're like, yeah, I'm doing great. And then we come right back to that same thing. But the nice thing is it's moving us through and we're not necessarily stuck on a loop where it's more of a ascending spiral. Occasionally might slip, but that's fine too. We're all perfect. All right, so the R's: recognize your true self, remember your purpose, renew your commitment, instigate change, illuminate your intentions, implement your intuition. The S's: separate from unsupportive patterns, seek support and surround yourself with supportive patterns, show up and step out, embody and empower. And tonight we're going to talk about evolve consciousness. And next month will be enjoy life and being you. And I don't know if you need a whole hour for that, but I'm sure it will be fun either way. All right. So this is the heart of what we're going to cover tonight. And I'm just going to go through each one. What I will say is that as an intuitive, I tune into people. I know your energy field. Basically, I just know you. Just sit in front of me and I know you. I know you deeper than you probably know yourself in so many ways, right? It's like I see patterns really clearly. I see your gifts. And sometimes people misconceive that to think that I have the answers for what is going to fix you in the future, right? And instead, it's like I can show you the patterns and I can give you the information that will help guide you to owning that. But it's not going to just happen, right? Coming into who you are is an effort. It takes consciousness. It takes a willingness. And unfortunately, we have a lot of really stuck beliefs about who we are. We have a lot of fears that get in the way. And so really my work is to hold space for you and say yes to all of it and say, yes, you're amazing. And yes, there's an issue. And yes, you can move through that. And yes, here's some things you can do. But the bottom line is that I don't have a formula. I don't work. I don't have like, oh, I'm going to get them to this point and I'm going to do it. I work very organically. And that is true for how I teach these classes. Basically, as I, looked at this and laid it all out, it's like, what is this that I'm looking for? And I just listen and basically channel, get all this information brought through. So when I teach this in this live way, I have no idea what I'm going to say. I just know that these are the places that I'm beginning, and it just comes through as it is. At any point, if you have a question, feel free to use the the little part that says, raise your hand, and that would be under reactions. Like if you want to react, you can. I don't really need a little hearts or cheering squad, but there is the place that says raise hand, and I will, be shown that, and I can unmute you. All right, so today's focus is evolve consciousness. And to evolve consciousness is simply to allow, to grow, to expand. One of the things I really want to hold space for is that you inherently are on a forward expansion trajectory. You can get in your own way and dig your feet in, but inherently we are meant to grow, meant to expand. It is part of our nature, right? And one of the things that can happen is we can start to feel as if we're struggling with our inner, let's say, demons, and that somehow growing and expanding and becoming more helps kind of get rid of what we don't want, right? And so it can feel like we're chasing, or that we're trying really hard, or that we're really trying to become better people. Maybe what you're doing in this place of allowing, growing, and expanding is allowing, growing, and expanding to accept your inner inherent perfection, right? To really own, wow, I have this little area over here that's wounded. So yes, I want to attend to that. I want to love that. But the key is to really, what I call, own it in a way that's not about like, well, I'm just the way this, I'm just bitchy and that's just the way it is, and you're just gonna have to deal with it because I'm owning it. It's not that. It's like, I have these triggers, and I can feel when it's gonna, be triggered. And so what I want to do is start to be curious about that, to start to understand what's making me get triggered, and how can I relate in ways that bring me more peacefulness, and therefore the people around me, right? Because your truth is, and I talk about this in the very first class, is remember who you are. The truth is that you are joy, you are love, you are this amazing being. And then when you incarnated, you decided, for whatever reason, we all did, it was actually kind of part of the agreement, is to believe in some way, shape, or form in unworthiness. You're like, oh, okay, gravity, unworthiness, I could do that. And then you incarnate, and then suddenly it's like, ooh, my parents are a certain way, and they're going to really make me believe I'm unworthy. Oh, I'm going to go to this class, and they're going to make me feel even worse because they're going to judge me and give me a letter grade, and it's going to make me feel bad about myself, right? And so we kind of like take on all these, projections, and we believe them, and they start to pile up into our belief in our unworthiness. It really gets anchored in there. And so our work, our consciousness, is to recognize that was all a story. And that we get to start to unpack that and remember, recognize and remember the oneness, that joy, that light, and that inherent, unshakable worthiness that we are. So is that making sense? I'm hoping that's making sense. Perfect. Yay. All right. So when you go into allow, grow, and expand, it's not an efforted trying. Sure, it's a willingness. It's coming from a place of, I'd like to learn a little bit more about myself, about the world, about consciousness, about spirituality, whatever that is. By the way, this is non-denominational, because again, my upbringing was just New Age. But to really recognize that when something comes to you or gives you an opportunity, why not lean in? So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this next. One of the things that I was told also as a child is, and if you know anything about metaphysics, you probably have heard this too, Earth is like a school, and we're all here as these little souls to evolve and grow and become. And I say, interesting, because if I'm God, and we are images and reflections of God, and God was just like bored and wanted to like experience what it was like to not be God, and like shot out all this energy and says, now, if I get really far from myself and I believe in unworthiness, then I'll, forget that I'm God, right? but what is it that God doesn't know? What is it that's really here to learn? So what I would like to, remind you is that it's more about our forgetfulness and our separation and kind of just having the experience of being human. And so it's not about learning, it's more about remembering, right? It's about removing the layers that made us foggy to begin with. So if anything, I want to use that word learn very lightly, right? Because again, we tend to have in our culture this upbringing that here's your starting point, here's your end point, and when you get this, you're better. And I want to just sort of expand it to you're perfect. You probably have trauma and wounds. You came in with all of this stuff, and now you're going to experience it. And so how do you want to experience it? How do you want to kind of wiggle your way out of this creation or this situation or the stories? And you could do it kicking and screaming and trying to run, which is what people often do when they start to use and do escapism. But you can also say, okay, I want to illuminate it. And consciousness is just another word for awareness, bringing awareness, right? So if there is something that's going on and you want to explore it, then, just take it as an invitation that life is inviting you in, and you can lean in, discover more, and stay curious. So I'm going to pause there. I know I speak very quickly. Any questions so far? Anything that anybody needs clarification about, or anything that you don't quite understand? I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here, Kelly.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say you're very fortunate to have grown up in a home with like parents or mother that was metaphysical. Because I feel like you've got like way head start from the rest of us, a lot of the rest of us. And the question that I have is, I've read a lot of books about metaphysical things and reincarnation and ascension, and I watch a lot of videos and everything. And what I get stuck on is okay, I read that we choose our lives, like we choose our parents, we choose our struggles. And then we have the veil of forgetfulness.
Right.
Okay, but then like when certain things keep happening, like for me, an example is my health. And it's like a pattern kind of in my life.
Right.
Starting with childhood, but not anything major, just like asthma when I was a kid, and then allergies, and now it's the point where I haven't been able to walk in a year and a half. And before that I had cancer, and then now I just found out that I have degenerative disc disease and I need 2 hip surgeries. And so the doctor told me I won't be able to walk for another 2 years. And I don't know if this is like what I chose in this lifetime to experience, or if somehow I'm not aligned with my purpose and I'm like doing something wrong.
Yeah, great question. I love this question. One of the videos that I'll share tonight that I'll just put in the chat is called "You Are Spiritual Enough." I should share another article, but it's connected. It is called, anyway, it's something about, the sense of us being spiritual enough, and then we're going to be rewarded. In fact, the client I had this morning, very same topic. So I'm going to cover this really briefly and also as concisely as I can. And this, again, isn't coming from how I was raised, gave me the foundation. What I tap into now is more evolved than that. And I want to also offer this disclaimer. I have no idea right? And that's one of the things we're going to talk about is let go of knowing anything, right? That I get to just speak, and if it resonates, yay, and if it doesn't, yay, right? That it's just information, insights, and we are all here to play. So, sad story. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of trauma in my life, right? And especially, which is really, really awful in the sense that I was raised that we are creating our reality. And I'm like, what the fuck? What did I do this for? Right? Like literally. And it just kind of has shaken my world, right? And one of the things I learned about this manifesting after I started to have these like human experiences is several things. One is, you know, when we think about manifesting is like doing, creating, and this sort of masculine right energy, but allowing is this divine feminine energy of receiving, right? And where is the grace? It's in the yes to both. It's the recognition of the creation and the recognition of what comes, and holding space for and recognizing the grace in that. And I want to use that word grace in this very light way. Now, in terms of, you know, what I see before we're born, in fact, I have a really good astrologer friend who does numerology and tarot. He will tell you what I tell you. Like I tell you because you ask questions, and I'm like, blah, 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 you know, he will then confirm it in your cards and your numerology because he basically says everything I say. But what's so cool is he's so funny. He's like, when you're a very evolved soul, you're kind of like, yeah, you know, or even if you're not, whatever, it's like, yeah, that earth thing, I'll take this and I'll take a little bit of that and I'll try this. And then you get here and you're like, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? So in essence, yeah, you know, you do pick, you know, your environment and your situation, but it doesn't mean that you're humanly right now consciously creating it, right? And so it's really hard in our culture. And I think that unfortunately with many spiritual teachings, the heart of it is going to come down to duality. If you're good, if you're spiritual enough, if you do X, Y, and Z right, your life will show that. And if you're not, if you're out of alignment, if you don't like this, your life is going to show that. All right. So yes and no, right? It's like, okay, life is. And if we get to these places of our spiritual practice where we recognize we are that, then there's less resistance. And it's not from a place of becoming and trying to figure it out. So there was I couldn't figure out how to describe my picture of evolution. And one day I'm like Googling it, like, what is it that I know and what is it called? And I found it by Michael Beckwith. And he talks about these 4 stages and for the, you know, of evolution. And the first is, you know, the victim, life happens to me, right? Everything's happening to me. Then you start to learn to manifest, or you start to learn, and then it's like life's happening for me. You're a little kid in a candy shop and you're like, oh, look what I'm manifesting. Look what I get to pull up, right? Then your next level. So when this stops working, you know, you're on to your next level of consciousness. So this will stop working. You know, for the most part, evolved souls do not stay in life just keeps feeding me, right? And I get to just have all, you know, candy I want. Then it's life happens, you know, through me, that suddenly you're this instrument. And it's like, wow, I'm creating and I can, you know, it's not just about me getting what I want, it's life's happening through me. And then the level of consciousness that we move into is life happens as me. And when we get to that level, it's not because of us being wrong or having bad thoughts. It's really that we've owned all of it, but we have released judgment. Does that make sense? So we're not holding ourselves in this shameful, accountable way and trying to fix ourselves. It's the ultimate in surrender and being in unity consciousness with all that is and the choices that are, and not necessarily taking it personal in terms of shame. I hope that helps. Okay. So I'm going to go on for a moment and then we can come back, and I want to go back to sharing my screen. Yes, and this is, you know, information is pretty big. And what I will say, there's something else I want to say too, which is energetically, you know, we're all, you know, working with the vibration, you know, all this. So what I recognize is when I'm working in these realms, it's just information is so big that energetically it can feel kind of like, ooh, and you might start to feel a little dizzy or anything like that. And so just allow you to meet you exactly where you are. So then I want to go on to this piece, which is let go of knowing anything, because if you are God incarnate and, God knows all, right? God is all knowing, let's say, then you already know. And yet we're infinite beings that go on forever and ever and ever. So when does it end where we would know what we think we know? And if you remember what they told us as children or whenever, is that we only use like 5% of our brains. And so I can't even imagine what we don't know, what we haven't tapped into. But it's kind of fun to think about and to play with. And again, I often talk about this idea of play. So when I first started doing readings, one of the things that I really got stressed about, because when I was, playing and saying, oh, do you want me to read some cards for you? I didn't do, my mom had tarot, she loved tarot from the time I was little, but I liked the medicine cards. So I was like, oh, and I'd play with them a bit. But it was just for fun. It was practicing intuition, etc. And I had a pendulum when I was a kid, and I would just, like, does he love me? That kind of thing. And, whatever. But when now people were going to pay me and they were asking me questions, I'm like, I don't know. What if I get it wrong? So I was, first learning to access my records. And so I was in the records because that was going to validate everything I could think of, because they were this field of knowing everything and I knew nothing and, all of that. So I was in my records and I asked, in my records, how do I know I'm going to be right? And the information was, you're always right. Even if the very next second, you're absolutely wrong. And I'm like, okay. But what it did was it shifted because it allowed me to be in the present and be right and let go of being right, because it could all be wrong the very next minute. And so I used to do a lot of disclaimers, now it's like written disclaimer, but I would tell people, well, I'm not sure, and I would have this sort of language that was sort of like, I'm unsure because I was afraid, but I would say, I have no idea if what I'm saying is true or if you just simply need to hear it. And that's for you to decide, right? And so my point being is that everything I say, I don't know, which book is it? Is it Illusions, or it might be Illusions, Richard Bach. Anyway, but one of these books is like, everything is everything in this book is wrong or something like that. It ends with the sense of like, all this was just a story, or, and you're like, wait a minute, I want to grasp, right? Our ego loves to grasp, to know, to hold on to find the answer, because in some way, shape, or form, we believe that when we get that, then we're going to be okay. And if we could start making peace with our okayness and start showing up with doubt, with insecurity, with the not knowing, with curiosity, we stay open to expansion. So it's all related in terms of the knowing. That being said, it's I have to say that anytime you start going into spirituality, you're really dealing with paradox, right? It's like, where both things are true. What seems like polar opposites become one, and we collapse into that. So it's like, let go of knowing anything, but know thyself, right? And even then, it's know thyself as best you can, and really just sort of playing, and as you're building confidence, it's like, yeah, know what you know, be proud of what you know, and then let it go, right? And so it's that kind of Buddhist sort of approach. It's the celebration and the grasping for a split second to go, yay, I get to pat myself on the back, and then letting it go. So just sort of playing with that. The next is be clear. Don't allow your light to be dimmed. Now, I will take a show of hands for this. How many of you shrink down and bring your vibration way down and who you are way down to meet the needs or what you perceive as the needs of other people? Yeah. Pretty much that's the story of, our childhood, right? It's behave be what mom and dad need so that A, we can get love, B, we can get fed, C, we can stay safe, right? All the things we do to behave and to keep ourselves sort of contained so that we can get accepted by others, but mostly our family and our family of origin. Even with my mom being metaphysical, she was absolutely human. She was a 16-year-old mom when she had me, and just was like, I'm so not doing how I was raised, so I'm going to just do everything, not the opposite, but I'm going to really bring consciousness into that, right? And she loved being in her mental body. She loved being in her head. And so in that, she loved to read. She loved escaping. She had such trauma in her life that she was so she couldn't connect with her body at all. It was all in her head. And so as a child, I'd have these long conversations like I was a little adult, and I'm like, or jokingly, I would tell people when I was, supposed to visualize myself getting well, if I was sick, I'd be like, can I just get chicken soup like the other kids? Because that responsibility of being this like adult, in a little kid body who just wants to be held is pretty big. It's pretty daunting. That being said, it's like I recognize that she was wounded and that she had her faults, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't traumatized by things that happened. And one of the things with her escapism is I didn't get much attention at all. Like, that it was like, if I had a conversation, then I could get attention. If I had like a physical need, it'd be like, you need to fix that. Right. And so there were these certain things that you just learn as a child, like how can I show up that I'm, that I'm okay and loved, and what do I not do? So that's just part of our, our survival in so many ways. As adults, we come into the world and think that we still have to kind of keep playing that. And I remember actually, even as women specifically, we're often taught, if you play by the rules and you're good, you'll get rewarded, right? And so I remember my mom, she worked at Hewlett Packard for like 28 years. And I remember when I was first new and I worked and I used to be a designer. I worked in a design firm and I was fresh out of college, and there was all this office politics going on. And I remember calling her like, and she's like, and there was some book, I don't know what the book is. It's probably something you would all remember. But basically she says, unfortunately, as women, we're taught to play by the rules, to get the good grades, and then you'll be okay. And you'll get rewarded because you'll get your A's, you'll get, pat on the head. But boys are taught to lie, cheat, steal, whatever they need to do because they're playing sports to get the win. And so in this male dominated, workforce, as a woman, it's like, I'm playing by the rules and everybody's passing me by. And men are like, here I go. And they're making their way to the top. That's not to negate sexism. My mom was an absolute, radical feminist. So there's that inherent sexism. But the point being is that we've been conditioned oftentimes to play by the rules. And when we look around, it's kind of a fixed game, right? And so our tendency, and this is out there with world, politics and, workforce, whatever, but there's still that place where we meet, like I'm being good, I'm showing up, I'm doing everything right, but my partner's not supporting me. I'm not getting this. I'm being such a good kid, right? And what's happened is we've literally given away our power, right? We've stopped being who we are. That's the number one place of being in our power, is being who we are, whatever that is. We often don't listen to our inner voice, don't speak our truth, right? Don't argue with people because we're trying to, be nice and stay in there. So we start to shut down basically all of our chakras. It's like, I don't want to know too much because they're going to tell me, well, who do you think you are? You're too smart. I can't see anything because if I see too clearly and I see that Dad's pissed, even though he's got a smile on his face, I'm going to be told, no, that's not the reality. So I stopped trusting that. I can't speak my truth, right? And you just go down the chakras, shut down until your light is so small that you believe it to be reality. I'm going to let Carol in. And so with that, it's a practice of awareness. Where am I shrinking? Where am I, accommodating? Where am I giving away my power, right? And the picture is not to overpower others. Sometimes we get to that point, we explode because we're just so suppressed, and then we explode because that's our only, reaction at that point. But it's not about that. It's this clarity. When you start to get clear about yourself, what do I know? What do I see? What do I need to say? What's my heart feeling? And we start to say yes to those things, and we practice it in safe environments. That's allowing that light to stay shining and moving and flickering without being dimmed. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I'm just touching on these briefly. So any questions so far? I'll pause again if there's any questions, or you could raise your hand either. I think the easiest way to be to raise, oops, sorry, I'm trying to get back to my screen here. Raise your hand virtually, which would mean with the little thing that says, reactions, raise hand. Otherwise I can continue, because what happens when you do it that way, then it gets flagged to the top so I don't miss it. All right. Now I want to move to laugh often. And my friend he's in his 70s, and he's in Reno, just over the hill, if you ever want to go and get a reading from him. But I also taught him how to use Zoom, so he's very good at that now. But he's been awake since the 70s, really cool guy. But I always feel like, remember the show, Kung Fu or whatever, it would be like, oh, grasshopper. That's why I feel I go to him and I ask him these big questions. And, and so one of the things, he's just so wise, but one of the things that he talks about is, I think it was Shakespeare, Merlin, somebody wise said, laughter is the highest form of, the highest vibration, is this highest form of communication and such. And so one of the things that I see is not just laughing like, oh yes, watching silly light movies or having a belly laugh with friends, but really coming into this place of learning to laugh at yourself and the unseriousness of life, right? And that's really hard to do when we start to see things crumble, right? And things aren't going the way we want, or when we're facing crises, health crises, money crises, et cetera. I will say my husband, he had such a funny sense of humor, and he actually was diagnosed with ALS in 2017, and it took him down really quickly. He passed away within a year, but he had one time we were there, and somebody came to see him. It was the hospice. The hospice came out, and there were like 5 people there, all these women. So it was me and another friend, and then it was his physical therapist. It was his the home health aide, right? And they walked in this hospice, and they said, "Who's the wife?" And one of my friends says, "Oh, we're all his wives." And he's like, "Why do you think I'm dying?" And so again, he had this humor he took to his grave, literally. And it's like, it didn't make his ALS go away. It didn't make anything, better in terms of, he was literally going on to hospice, and here we were, and that humor just softened and lightened the moment. Anyway, and so, there's that piece in which we get to choose when something feels like I'm ready to laugh at this, I'm ready to meet this, and kind of, play in that humor a bit. I'm going to go ahead and share the resources. One of the articles is called You Are Always Spiritual Enough. No, that's the watching, but that is an article. If you watch it in there, there's it's on YouTube. It shows you the related article, but it's Laugh Like a Laughing Baby. And what I will say is that in my yoga class, she'll often have us do the laughing baby pose. And then what she'll have us do is literally just start laughing as we're sitting, feet up in the air, and just out loud, like, and it starts off this fake, you're just like forcing yourself. And then you hear somebody else doing it. It sounds so stupid. Then you laugh because it sounds so stupid and you feel stupid. And then you keep, and pretty soon everybody's actually laughing and it just moves this energy. And it's like the sweetest way to play and to be playful and to be in this place of laughter. So those are the general pictures of evolving our consciousness, of moving toward that which we already are, that which we already know, remembering our truth, remembering, who we've come here to be. And I do want to go back and address, the obstacles for a minute, because I know, Kelly, you brought up the health issues. And we all, well, I could say, people don't usually come to me when they're feeling great. They don't go, hey, everything's going well, let's sit down and have a reading. But regardless of whatever it is that they've come to me, what I do see as a pattern is the human condition is that we all have something. We all came in with something to play with, to experiment with, to so-called overcome, with the purpose of A, having an earth experience, and B, remembering our wholeness, our holiness, remembering our truth, remembering that love consciousness that we are, that's non-negotiable, and as much as we wish it were. And on that note, one of the things with my husband when he was sick, one of his things he struggled with as from the time he was a child and into his adulthood was his own worthiness. And it was like he had a hard time receiving, right? Some of you may relate to this. It's like he had a hard time receiving. Well, when he was our provider, financial, and he could no longer physically do, which was what his whole work was. He was a contractor. And literally he couldn't move. He literally couldn't move. Like everything was shutting down. It's like, the person who feels like I have to do in order to be worthy, I have to do in order to provide, I have to do right. It's like here it was. And all these people showed up. I mean, we had so much support. It was insane. But he literally told one of my friends, he says, he goes, it's kind of too bad that it takes me getting to this point for me to realize and recognize how loved I am and how supported I am and how to receive. Right. And that might have been part of what he wanted to get out of this life. I don't know. It's not my place. It affected me, but it's sort of like, oh, okay. But it was profound, and at the same time sad, right? It's like, what is it going to take in our lives that get us to remember how lovable we are, to remember that we are love, right? That no matter what we do, no matter what it looks like, we can't change that, right? So any questions about anything I've covered so far? Again, you can raise your hand and I'll just allow you to unmute yourself. So on my website, I included in the chat the articles. They're all just linkable. And when you go to my website, a little, what is it called? Little pop-up will show up and it'll ask you if you want to join my mailing list. And basically in that mailing list, you get 2 free gifts. One is a downloadable PDF, which is called Awaken Your Intuition. It's a little booklet. My mom and I, would teach intuitive skills classes together. And so it was just sort of a little mini compilation of that, of really getting in tune with, as well as I include an audio of me guiding you to access your own Akashic records through meditation. So it's a guided imagery. So that also comes as part of my thank you for joining my mailing list. But when you go there, you'll see that there are, if you go up to discover articles, you could type in anything in the search practically, and you'll find some kind of article to support you in your journey. So anything else? Let's see. The next one is Enjoy Life and Being You. It'll be Monday the 19th. This will be the only one that's, isn't the 4th Monday of the month, because that happens to be, I think, Christmas or Christmas Eve. And so same time. And I would love to have you join me. I don't have anything else except if you want to, I'm just gonna, how do I stop sharing? There we go. If you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to, let's go ahead, Michelle. You can unmute yourself. Oh, you were clapping.
Oh, I'm just saying thank you.
Yeah,
very
you're
much. This is
welcome.
great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like, oh, the little thing came up. It was
No, I just want to say thank you.
yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. Any questions? If I can, Debbie, you want me to unmute you? I'll go ahead and ask to unmute.
Hi, can
Hi.
you hear me? Yeah,
can.
I just wanted to say thank you as well. Everything that you talk about so resonates. I've been looking at it, learning about it, open to it, and just it's been a part of my life. So this is so refreshing. Thank you. I just love to hear you because you also say some of the things that I've already kind of understand, but in a different way that's really easy to understand. So it's great. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're
That's all.
welcome. Absolutely. And thank you for that.
Sure.
And I'll unmute you, Sherry, or ask you to unmute.
Hi. So when you sign up for the email and you get those little books and things you were talking about, do they come in a separate email? How do I find them?
Oh, did you sign up?
Yes.
Okay, so what'll happen is then you're going to get an email that will say, thank you for joining my email. And
Okay.
it'll give you instructions on how to download it. And
Okay.
so it's just basically, it's like, I've done everything myself, I've done everything on a shoestring budget. So done my own website, all that stuff. So I've always had to figure it out. And luckily my brain works that way that I can figure out many things. So this was my best solution is like, okay, lead you to my store page, enter the coupon code, and then you can download your gifts, and they're digital. And so you can do whatever you want with them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So basically, like I said, I didn't say this, which I should have, but if you're on my mailing list, you will know I am offering a buy one, get one free special. I've been doing readings for 17 years professionally, working with people as a spiritual mentor, which mentoring is really just holding space for you as you evolve. So it's like, I don't see it as an agenda to get you like, how do I make this money? How do I get this boyfriend? How do I, get to whatever? But really, because what I hold space for is how do we get back to who you're here to be? And all those things do start to show up in the best way, or you learn how to make peace with them, whichever it is. It's like really coming from this different place. But what I'm offering the special on the buy one, get one is in, excuse me, is in the readings. And so some people will use both for themselves. You're welcome to do that. So let's say you decide to buy 2 half hours, buy one, get one free, you buy a half hour. You can turn your appointment into an hour, or you can gift them to people, or you can spread them apart however you want to. And so, and you don't have to schedule the appointment right away. Basically, you'll get a coupon code. You can either print the gift certificate, or you can just go ahead and schedule. So, so yeah, those are options as well. And then anything else, any other questions, anything else I could answer for you that has come up for you? All right, let's see how we're doing time wise. Oh, we're early. So I will let you go. If you think of anything, feel free to email me. You can email me at veronicaleetv. And I will, once this uploads, it'll probably be in the next few days. I will put it on my on that one page, the page where you can find all the classes. And so you can watch it, the replay, share it with friends, whatever. And it'll also include all the links that I shared in there in terms of other resources. All righty. Well, thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening. It was a pleasure, and I will connect with you another time. And if anybody happens to come out to the psychic fair on Sunday, I'll see you there in Sacramento. Bye-bye.